Alright folks, this is the first time putting together something like this, so bear with me. Hopefully it's not too lame, and more importantly, hopefully it is helpful as you're working on your homework assignments this week. What I'm going to do is just quickly go through what I did in class, and hopefully you'll have the opportunity to review this as you are working on your homework assignments. The data that you see in front of you are the same data from class, from lecture, from examples when we were doing it by hand. A couple things to point out. Notice that the ID variable is left justified. That tells me that I've set this up as a string variable. And again, if I go into variable view, clearly you'll see Yahoo, string variable. The other variable gender is there, just as an FYI. Remember, you can use numbers to enter variables that are string in nature, but you would only do that if there's only one or two, not a novel one for each case as you see in the ID variable. So male, female, year in school, yada yada yada. Those would use variable view, still numeric, but under value labels you would male 2 equals female. Third column is PC data, and if you recall from PC data in class, is the actual scores each college student performed on the assessment of their personal control inventory. Again, you would not have value labels for that, but you could put in a more verbose title, for example. And when you actually go to look at your output at the end of the day, it'll be one step fewer that you'll have to do when you're editing and cleaning up your output. Alright, so to do the first thing, this is a simple frequency distribution. All you need to do is remember that I'm going to do statistics, so I need to go to Analyze. And simple frequency distributions are descriptive statistics. And there you have your frequencies. Select frequencies, and we have all these different variables to choose from. The one that is the variable that holds our data is PC data, or now you see it says personal control. So I'm going to bring that over. Under statistics distribution, and these data are ratio in nature. I know that I'm going to want to produce a mean, median, and mode. Our measure of variability, standard deviation, and skewedness from our lectures in class today. Click. You'll see options, but remember, if you choose histograms, not only will it screw up the way your format looks, a kitten will die. So do not choose histograms here. Under format, you descending values. Okay. Continue. Click OK. And in our SPSS output file, you will see that there's a whole bunch of stuff, but the two things you want to focus on is your, the first is your statistics for your mean, median, mode, right? That should match what you do by hand. And then a table that has all your frequency, your simple frequency distribution. Again, from highest to lowest, as we said in lecture today. Now again, there's stuff in here that I don't need, so if I click, hit delete, click, hit delete, click, hit delete, all I have now are the two things in the output file that I would want to see in your homework. Now I'm going to switch back to our data editor, and I need to make a histogram now. Jeff said if I click that button, the kitten would die, so of course I did not click that button. So now I want to make a graph. I want to go to Graphs, under Legacy Dialog, and choose histogram. Now the only at this point is the variable. This is where the data is located. So I need to go back over to my options, my choices on the left hand side, choose the variable that has my personal control inventory scores, and then bring it over. Then click OK. Now SPSS is going to generate a histogram, but it's going to need editing, and there's several things you're going to have to do. We'll switch to our output file and scroll down to where our graph is, And if you recall, if you hover over this, it's going to tell you to double click to activate. Double click it, and it's going to open up Chart Editor. Now, Chart Editor is a sub-program of the SPSS Statistics Viewer. So this is where you're going to edit and make changes to your graph so that it meets all the standards that we talked about in the lecture today. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to get rid of all kind of unnecessary information. So this being up here has nothing to do with the figure, so I'm going to go ahead and, even though SPSS generates, the next thing we're going to do is double click bars, property dialog box, some things about the bars. Now again, you can change lots of different things, the size, the color of the bars, but what we're going to focus on first is the binning. Remember, binning equals I. Okay, in our notes, when we calculated what the I was for a simple or a group frequency, this is where we're going to put that information in. Now, with simple frequency, your I always equals 1 because there's one score per class intervals in simple frequency distribution. So your bin for your graph should be your interval width equal to I, which in a simple frequency is 1. Now, the custom value for anchor is going to be the lower limit of the lowest score in the distribution. And if you recall, the lowest score in the distribution was a 31, so the lower limit would be 30.5. Okay, click apply, and if we come back to our graph, you can see that it's changed, which is good. Next thing we want to change are the labels on the x-axis. There's a couple things we're going to need to change, and I'll go through each one. So again, I double click on the labels on the x-axis, properties dialog box, and again you'll see specific properties to that axis. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and change the scale. Now for SPSS, the way they produce their graphs, you're probably going to have to do this for every graph we do. Okay? So underneath the minimum range, you're always going to set it to 0. Okay? Remember, we want the origin of the graph to be 0, 0, right? The major increment, I'm going to go ahead and set that for 3, and I'm going to tell you why in a few minutes, but that will make sense, hopefully, based on what you recall from lecture today. Again, we're going to get rid of the padding, the lower margin and the upper margin. We're going to change them both from 5% to 0%, so our graph reflects exactly what we want it to look like, not having padded portions on either end of the distribution. So if I click, come back, now still not, it's not pretty yet, but we're getting close. Okay. Next thing we want to change is labels and ticks. I want to display major ticks, and I want it to display minor ticks. Okay. And remember, you want to have the number of minor ticks equal to the number of units in between each of the major increments. So there's 3 units in between, and it's going to display one of them, right? So I want to have 2, so 1 for major, and you're going to have 2 minors for every major. Okay? That way every whole value is represented on the x-axis. The next thing we want to do is get rid of unnecessary information. So those 2 decimal places that are 0.00, we want to get rid of those. So 0 decimal places. Click apply now. Apply now, and come back to the graph. You'll be able to see that on the x-axis, starting the 0, 0, the origin is 0, 0. And then as you go from 0 up to other values, every third one is a major increment, and in between it there's 2. So there's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, etc., etc. If I come down to my first 2 bars, you would see that we have under 31, which is our lowest